It seems like for the last 1,000 years, the church has had one strategy for moving people into a relationship with Christ. It's been entirely based on extrinsic motivators, reward and punishment. Give your life to Jesus, you go to heaven, and of course you get to avoid hell. And somehow we've convinced ourselves that this is the biblical narrative, this is the way of Jesus, and yet you'd be hard-pressed to ever find that particular approach from Jesus himself. In fact, there's a much better way, a much more powerful way, a much more human way to realize that God has created us with intrinsic cravings, intrinsic longings that actually move us toward God. In the same way that we have these basic physical needs, the need to eat and to drink and to breathe. You know, eventually you get hungry and you go find food. Eventually you get thirsty and you go find some way to quench that thirst. Eventually, and very quickly by the way, you start suffocating when you don't get the oxygen that you need and you start gasping for air. And that determination to find what we need for physical survival, it's even deeper and more powerful when we begin to listen to the intrinsic narratives of the human soul. All of us have an intrinsic craving for intimacy, for love, to connect, to belong. All of us have an intrinsic craving for meaning, to make sense of our life, to find truth, to find someone that can be trusted. Each of us have an intrinsic craving for destiny, to believe that our lives can be significant for this thing that we describe as purpose, that all of us long for our lives to actually matter. And is it possible that these intrinsic cravings, these intrinsic narratives were placed within each of us by God, and that this was his way of leveraging everything in his direction in the same way that it drives us to eat and to drink and to breathe? Our souls are driven to find God. Because no matter what we experience in this life, no matter what we attain in this life, no matter what we find in this life, we'll never find that unconditional love. We'll never find the meaning that helps us overcome every tragedy. We'll never find that ultimate sense of destiny and calling for which we were created until we find our connectedness to God. It's this wonderful reality that all of us have a unique story, but we're in a bigger story. And as we begin to discover who we are, we begin to discover that we were created for a relationship with God. Maybe that's why Jesus said, "I'm the way and the truth and the life," and that no one comes to the Father except by him, because he understands that he is the one who wrote our story and is the only one that can finish it well.